The decision to largely shy away from pay-per-view, I know you said it may still be on the table, but stay over. I mean, how difficult of a decision was that to make?
It's not that it's on the table. I mean, the whole thing started going out. Pay-per-view's dead. Pay-per-view's not dead. We're on pay-per-view on Saturday. And the pay-per-view business is still very much alive and well. But, you know, we were talking about potential pay-per-view with other streaming partners that we were talking to in the deal, but just not in this one. And you know, who knows what could happen? The beautiful thing about this business is every year something happens that I don't see coming. You know, a fight that you never thought would happen, or who knows? I mean, now, you know, we're doing boxing and we're doing MMA. Who knows what could happen? And anything could be a pay-per-view. Something could be a pay-per-view still.
So Dana White is making the UFC's position very clear. We could still make you open up your wallet to pay for certain events with us. Look, the wording is what we need to pay attention to. And according to every report out there, it is UFC numbered events. So sure, they've got this $7.7 billion deal over the next 7 years. But it is UFC numbered events. UFC 457, UFC 349. It doesn't say tough. It doesn't say anything about anything else. The boxing that he brought up, it doesn't say any of that. It says UFC numbered events. It doesn't say UFC Las Vegas. It says UFC numbered events. That's where the crosshairs could come in here. And it even says select marquee events, could be on CBS, which, look, I've said over and over again, and I think that we can all agree that sports should be a nationally televised event, especially big-time fights. I think we all miss it being on Spike. I think we all miss it being on Fox. We loved having the replays on Fox. If you missed a pay-per-view, a month later, you could see it on a Friday or Saturday night. Does this help open up a new audience? I don't know. I mean, look, the UFC is already in over 200 countries and territories, and it's over 600 fighters represent about 75 nations. It's already a global event. But I think the pay-per-view buy rates are what's hurting the UFC. In fact, reportedly so. This last quarter, the pay-per-view buy rates were down significantly from 2024. And by the way, the ESPN deal promises $350 million up front for distribution and another $250 million on the back end, and the pay-per-view buys aren't there. Where's the money all going to come from? You got to rely on your gate exclusively. And I don't think the UFC feels like, with all the promotional packages and everything else right now, that it's not a good idea. Here's what I think we're going to end up seeing with the UFC. I think, number one, Dana White's going to continue to do whatever he can to expand on the slap thing. I don't like it. I think it's egregious. I don't even call it sport, but it is what it is. I think he's going to figure out a way to get pay-per-view buys on that to kind of, in the meantime, supplement what they won't get in pay-per-view buys from UFC events. Then I think for about 3 to 6 months, what you're going to see is big-time fights that are going to be broadcasted on Paramount, on CBS. We're all going to get very used to that. And then this White House thing is going to happen. And Dana White is going to strike a deal with somebody to where you have to do a pay-per-view for that because, again, it's UFC numbered events. UFC White House will not probably be numbered. It's all about the naming and the title. That is where everything gets a little muddled. I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We don't know what the fighters' pay is going to look like, even though Dana White is promising that it's not going to be affected. We don't know if he's going to finally say, look, go ahead and go get your own money now. We don't know what's going to happen with a lot of different things. But we do know this, that on the surface, it's a great look. But we don't know if Paramount Plus now is going to decide, hey, look, man, we're going to go ahead and increase our prices in order to supplement what they've got to pay out the UFC. Understand something, that Dana White wanted a $1 billion a year promise. That was part of the original Netflix negotiation. And they had, apparently, from what he just said, discussed pay-per-views with Netflix, and apparently they were not going to be okay with it. There's something in there that Paramount Plus has not told us yet. And I think that they're going to be okay with UFC going out and getting their own money. But don't forget that the price for a pay-per-view went from $59 to $79, but that's if you were already a subscriber to ESPN Plus. So you had to be paying their $110. Well, what was it originally? $99 or $89. Then it went up to $99. Then it was $110. Then it was $120. I mean, they keep increasing it by $10 every single year. And so now with their new app, it's going to be $30 a month. But the point of what I'm saying is you had to have the subscription in order to get that discounted price, because without it, it was $125 for a pay-per-view. Now, they hosted, obviously, some of the other events like Tough and UFC Las Vegas, but whether or not Paramount is going to do those things, we don't know. And I think it's pretty obvious that Dana White was upset and offended by the question. Well, bro, we're spending tons of money just to watch sports from the comfort of our own home. You're getting your money at the gate, whether you're the UFC, the NFL, the NBA, which supposedly has been down, but that's their fault with the officiating and everything else that I'm not going to get into right now. The point is that we as sports fans are tired for paying a mass amount of money. They're putting all this stuff behind a paywall now when it used to be locally broadcasted on NBC, ABC, CBS, other local stations. I remember very clearly growing up and being able to finally get WGN. And so because we had WGN out of Chicago, that's how we were able to watch all those Bulls games growing up. You've got to make it palatable for an entire audience to participate. You want people to get interested in fighting. You want to develop fighters. You want somebody to have the dream of growing up and being a UFC fighter. Then you're going to have to make it to where they can just watch it, no problem. It's becoming something that's for the super rich. You got YouTube TV. You got the NFL Network sliding now with ESPN and that paywall that's going to be there. And then you've got an additional paywall now with the NBA and their yearly package and everything else. And then you've got team paywalls. I mean, it's all becoming too expensive. Something has got to give. I called it an overall win, but I'm still skeptical about what's going to happen going forward. Speaking of being skeptical, man alive, I'm really super suspect of that Bengals offensive line still. In case you didn't see it, here's the scuffle that happened when Joe Burrow got rocked. Now is the time. I mean, it's borderline criminal what that offensive line has been to Joe Burrow. Since 2020, he has been sacked 196 times. It's second most in the NFL behind Russell Wilson with 213. By the way, he's only played 69 games. In fact, he's missed 23 games, and he's still been sacked 196 times. The Bengals should be in football jail for what's happened with Joe Burrow over there. I mean, people wanted to talk about the Chicago Bears being responsible for Justin Fields. If there was ever a football team that has been irresponsible for the way that it has gone down with their quarterback, it's got to be the Bengals. And by the way, somehow he's still thrown for over 19,000 yards despite that pitiful offensive line. Still got his team to a Super Bowl despite that pitiful offensive line. And by the way, they had a lead in that game. They should have won. Regardless of how that went down, the bottom line here is it's just hilarious to watch. I mean, everybody's looking at this going, Brody, come on. Really? He's been playing from his back his entire career. Now all of a sudden everybody wants to get mad. And I guess better late than never. But, you know, the reality is Zach Taylor, how that man is still a football coach, number one, given what's happened with Joe Burrow, is unbelievable to me. The man is hanging on for dear life to having one Super Bowl appearance. He didn't do anything when he was at Texas Tech, which, by the way, He had Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes. Let that sink in. It's ridiculous. I really hope this becomes like the norm for the Cincinnati Bengals. I really hope that they understand now what it takes to protect their quarterback. I mean, to me, this is just a situation where it's like, dude, come on, we're in practice. Don't touch our quarterback. We're in practice, man. What's your beef, bro? I mean, you ever seen The Replacements? Remember The Replacements, the scene where, we don't hit the guys with the red? It's a lot like that. Where I think people are taking this at comedic value more than the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line finally coming together and going, we are going to protect our quarterback this season. He's going to have more than 2.3 seconds to throw the football. League average is 2.79, by the way. Finally, Shedeur Sanders, I'm sure everybody saw him getting carted off, oblique injury. Then, of course, Jalen Hurts was having a one-on-one with him. Look, I'm not going to get into the conversation that he had with Jalen. I don't care. Jalen and him are talking about whatever Jalen and him are talking about, and that's just that. Not everything is a need-to-know situation, and it's not like Jalen's recruiting him over to the Philadelphia Eagles because that's the potential of taking his spot. Quarterback to quarterback, he's just having a conversation with him. Whether it's being big bro or whatever the case may be, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's our business. I think we're way too involved in the personal lives of athletes. I understand reporters have a responsibility to ask the question. That's fine. I've been there. I've done that. Hopefully I don't have to work in the field like that again, but I'm just telling you that I personally don't care. What I do care about is the Cleveland Browns and how they have completely mishandled this situation from the beginning. Now, I've said before, this could all be a ruse, right? We could all be being snowballed by the Cleveland Browns. They could be bluffing 100% of the way. What do I mean by that? Well, listing Shedeur as the fourth and then allowing him to start, especially over Dylan Gabriel, which, by the way, I understand Dylan was hurt, but everybody's been talking about Dylan being the guy. Over Shedeur, they drafted both of them, which, who does that? The only thing that most of us, I think, can surmise at this point is they're just kind of, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. One or the other is going to work out, right? And then you see the performance. Shedeur played good. He didn't play great, right? But I think the thing is the criticism would have been really loud had he had played horrible. But he made some throws. He missed some throws. There were some wide open guys. Don't get me wrong. And then there were plays, where he's running backwards and all that. And I get that. But if you count 1.5 seconds to throw the football, ain't a whole lot of time, especially when, again, the league average is 2.79 from a season ago. So we have to consider the amount of time. And then the routes still are not done. I mean, if you're going to spread everybody out and go 5 wide, why are we running these complex routes? 2 inside slants, 2 outs, and maybe a slant and go or sluggo or something like that. But we don't run slow go routes. Meanwhile, there's slow go routes. But regardless, the point of what I'm saying is something like that, where you take a shot, you've got somebody going deep essentially, just in case the line is able to hold up. You've got 2 quick outs really fast here just to get past the sticks. You're able to throw it to the outside, let your receiver go and get it. You've got the quick slant routes. If you're on the inside, then you're gonna make it. And then you take your far inside receiver and if anything, just tell him to run a 9 route. Just go. I mean, it was play calling on the side of the Cleveland Browns. It had nothing to do to me with Shedeur or anything like that. It was just a bad play call. Run a sneak, something up the middle, an option play, something. And like I say, if you're going to go 5 wide, then that's the way to go in that situation. Everything's short. You want to get just past the sticks. All the routes are exactly, a yard over. I'm boom, 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 boom. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. but we're putting players in no-win situations as coaches, and that blows my mind. Your job as a coach is to make sure that your players succeed. So why not make the best possible play call instead of let's see how he handles a crazy play call like this when he doesn't have time from the offensive line? And the routes don't give you, they're not helping you out in any way, shape, or form. You know, you got guys, all right, let me get this button hook real quick. Man, up and in. I'm just saying. And people are worried about the GM with the Cleveland Browns and da-da-da-da-da, and Cleveland setting him up for failure. It's a top-to-bottom thing. Top-to-bottom thing. And to have him right now listed as fourth on the depth chart is beyond me. I'm sorry. You're not going to convince me that Dillon Gabriel is a better quarterback coming out of college than Shador. Don't forget, he had the 77th worst offensive line in all of college football. And if you break it down by seconds and sack plays, then he actually had the worst offensive line in all of college football. There's over 130 teams in Division I. And even if we take it at face value at 77, that still makes them barely in the top 50% in terms of having good line play. Let that sink in. All right, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I am wherever you are listening to broadcasts. Take a device to play the Drew Duncan Sports Show, The Smoke by Drew Duncan. I am everywhere you are listening. Everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, and have a wonderful rest of your night and or day.